Right, let's talk about Declan Rice and that contract situation that's been blowing up today. To be fair, when it come out, I instinctively thought this is a bit of a ploy from journalists to try and act as though Declan Rice is urgent and is urgent for a move away. And I've never really bought it. I think X will tell you all you need to know regarding that and the truth of the information. I think sometimes journalists are quite keen to get Declan Rice out of the club. I think it was something Alfie Inge Haaland actually come out today or yesterday on social media and said agents are the main reason, or journalists, sorry, are the main reason why these players get linked to clubs. And then obviously there's a blame game thereafter. Now, the facts of the situation regarding Declan is he has got a 3-year deal currently, and I'll get into the wage structure in a minute, with an option of a 4th deal. Now, that gives you a fair bit of security. The only thing I would say about it was a deal that was agreed around 2 years ago. And since then, obviously, the player himself has become much greater in stature. He's improved. We all know that. He's really matured into a defensive midfielder, and he's showing other elements of his game that I think he can add. And going forward, he's only going to get better. So I think the player that signed that initial contract compared to the player now is a level above. And I wonder whether at the Euros, given the importance that Gareth Southgate has upon him, that actually he sat there and thought, listen, I know my worth. And Declan Rice is more than entitled, by the way, to really and truthfully demand probably what he wants. Now, there'll be people out there that will be talking about a wage structure. Every club or most clubs have one. But when you're looking at a wage structure that essentially denotes Yarmolenko, I believe it's £115,000 a week. We know Allaire was probably on 120. We know Felipe Anderson was probably on 130. For Declan Rice to only be on, and I believe this is around £90,000 a week, which in normal life is quite a fair bit. In football terms, it isn't. Now, it's not really for me just about the wage. It's about the type of wage that shows how important he is to this football club. That's the biggest thing for me. Now, to really show that importance, you've got to really make him the highest earner. You've got to. Now, I'm not saying go out there and obliterate the structure. I think the structure, to be honest, is outdated. The players that I mentioned to you, one of them's left, one of them barely plays, and one of them was out on loan last season. So I think there'll be a fair few players within that squad sitting there thinking, we finished 6th throughout the whole campaign. We've proven our worth. We've been massively consistent. And I actually believe Declan is probably the most consistent player in this West Ham side. So whilst it is outdated, it can be updated. And I think a lot of the portion of those wages, should they go out in the summer, should be afforded to Declan Rice. I think it's important for the club to make a statement. Now, we know what Gold, Sullivan and Brady are like. We know this is the negotiation, low ball tactics that they consistently peddle. And it happened last time out with Declan Rice. If you remember, there was quite a fair few concerns. The club were offering really piddly money. Let's be honest. I think it was probably 10, 15,000, and he eventually got the 40k that he deserved. Again, for West Ham to progress, and this isn't even talking about investing. This isn't talking about bringing other players to the club. For West Ham to progress and almost create a level of stability, you need to show respect to the playing staff that you already have. I'm not saying go out there and give contracts to aging players or players with injury problems. You look at Declan Rice, a player that's massively consistent, that's barely injured, that his level of performance is improving season upon season. He deserves, really and truthfully, whatever money that he's asking for within reason. Now, I believe that if the club don't match his ambition, I'm not saying he's going to push for a move away. It is actually in this scenario that I feel it would make sense for him to say, you're not showing any ambition. I should therefore turn my attention possibly to a move. I don't think Declan Rice is the character or the type of player to agitate for a move. I think it's quite similar in a way to Harry Kane at Tottenham, where you know Kane's not going to agitate for that move away from Spurs because of the relationship with the fans. It's very similar with Declan Rice. I hate to compare it to a Tottenham player, but just take that as an example. But given the circumstances, given the level of quality that they have, and given that they're positioned within their careers, Declan technically would be entitled to look at other clubs if we cannot match it. Now, what I will say about this, and what I can understand from the news that has been filtered through, is Declan Rice isn't trying to get away from the club, isn't trying to progress a move. He just wants to see the money that he deserves to reflect his ability. And I think that's fair enough. Now, I don't think anything necessarily is going to happen this summer. I think Declan Rice stays at the club. The position and the precariousness of this position that now the board have put West Ham in, David Moyes in, and ultimately Declan Rice in, he could be persuaded, maybe. Listen, with the Declan Rice transfer saga that just goes on and on and on and on because of the rumours from journalists, I just feel that we haven't even seen a club come in with a bid. We don't know what value they've come in with because they haven't. We don't know what they would test West Ham at. We don't know. These are things that we don't know. But you've got to look at the position. Declan Rice not agitating for a move. A 3-year deal with a possible another fourth option added in. For me, there's a fair amount of security there. But I think it's within reasonable request that they give Declan Rice and to be fair, make him the top earner. That's what I would like to see in the next 2 months. We can talk about the transfer activity, which I don't think has swayed Declan Rice's mindset, but naturally as a player, if you're looking around and you're not really seeing encouraging signs, I think it is a little bit too early, to be honest, to go off the deep end and say West Ham are going to struggle or we're not going to bring anybody in. It's just too early for me. But I do agree with some people's frustration when they're looking at it and thinking, why are we not making any moves? The clear targets there, from what I can see at West Ham, are Tammy Abraham and Jesse Lingard. Now, the Lingard deal is a bit tricky. The player apparently wants to stay, or at least is willing to stay at Manchester United if he's convinced. Now Jadon Sancho's joined. I think that's another spanner in the works. I think that works in West Ham's favour. I don't think the wage structure is a problem because I think, again, like I say with Declan Rice, the players that we've had, the two players that we have at this club now that could inevitably leave this summer, Felipe Anderson and Andrei Yarmolenko, would cover the wages, would cover a wage increase for Declan Rice, and B, would allow Jesse Lingard to come in on the type of wage that he wants. And I think the wage that both of those two are asking for, they deserve. So I don't think that's necessarily a hurdle. The problem is whether the board, it's the action of the board. It's how quick they are being off the mark. If you let this rumble on, and Jesse Lingard at one point decides to leave, I think his preferred location is West Ham, but it doesn't mean that a club like an Everton, it doesn't necessarily mean that if Leicester, for example, lost James Maddison, they would look at Jesse Lingard. These are things that West Ham shouldn't be leaving up to chance. I think that's why people are slightly agitated with how slow some of the business has been, or at least from what we can tell in terms of gauging interest. So I think that's the concern from most fans. The Tammy one, the Tammy situation is a situation that I said could happen a while ago. And I'm not being one of them people that says, oh, it was me first, because it wasn't. Because I think anyone with common sense could see that if a club comes in with the money that Chelsea are demanding, there's no guarantee that Tammy will come to West Ham. I think probably some of us thought, or maybe some people on the outside thought, Tammy to West Ham is inevitable. Declan Rice links, you speak to all these Chelsea fans, that seems to be what they're peddling. You know, Tammy, I want Tammy at the club. And I think more importantly, above what I want or what fans want, and I have my reservations about Tammy Abraham in terms of his overall play. That's for another video. But more importantly than anything, that from what we're led to believe, that is David Moyes' first choice target. And that's the bit that I don't like. I don't agree with the valuation of 40 million for Tammy Abraham. But what I will say is that if he's David Moyes' top target, if that's the one that he's willing to pin his hat on and say, that's the guy. And listen, you look at his age, he's 23 years old. He's scored 15 goals in the Premier League before. He's got experience with Chelsea. He's been with Aston Villa. He's been around the block for a player that's only 23, and he's still got the potential to grow and develop. And you've seen with David Moyes with some of these players, how he's been able to nurture the off-the-ball side of the game. Now, if Tammy develops that, which you have to believe with the way that some of these other players have developed, he will become a very proficient Premier League striker, and he will go and get 10 to 15 goals, possibly more, in a season. So I can see the attraction for David Moyes. If they don't spend the money that's required to get him in, and we don't have other targets lined up, which you're led to believe, I don't think we really do. We probably do some rough targets, but not a nailed-on target. That's my worry, because I think you have to then therefore go out and give Chelsea a £35 million. Not that I agree with it. And to be honest, I would pay 25 to 30 if it was up to me. But if that's the guy that David Moyes wants, like I say, you've got to back him. The guy's proven everything. Now, I hope he hasn't signed the new contract at West Ham without assurances. I hope he's demanded those. We've starting to see little bits of the jigsaw, and I don't always agree with it, but a possible director of football in Alan Irvine, his son is a possible scout. David Moyes clearly wants a little bit of control over the club and how it develops. And quite rightly, we don't have the structure in order to compete with that. So fair play to David Moyes, but you've got to give him the man. And I think with a signing like Tammy Abraham, a possible signing like Tammy Abraham, you're looking at a player that could be at West Ham for 4 or 5 years, develop, move into his prime. And if he improves at West Ham, who knows? You've got an asset there, a player that wants to be at the club. You look at the core as well of some of these players, a lot of them based in London. If you keep Declan Rice there, if Lingard comes there, it's a good core of players and a good ethos. And I think that's what Tammy could buy into, and it's what West Ham could benefit from. So I think inactivity in this sense will hurt us. The problem is Aston Villa will come in with that full price tag. They will go and pay for him. Now, I think Aston Villa are going to sell Jack Grealish. From what I can understand, you're bidding for Emile Smith-Rowe for 30 million. You're looking at Tammy for 40. You've brought other players in, Buendia for nearly 40 million. I believe they're going to sell. Now, I know they've got a lot of money behind them, but I think they will sell Jack Grealish. So we're competing with that, and that's my only concern. I guess some people will say don't wait around for the targets. I think we haven't even engaged with Tammy, to be honest. Lingard's a different ballgame because he's been at the club before, but we haven't even engaged enough. And I think I can see why people are getting frustrated with that. So to a degree, I'm fully on board with it. And I hope within the next month, and I've said this before, that we show some kind of interest, even if it is an interim bid. If we don't bid for Tammy or we don't engage in talks for Tammy in the next month, I'm seriously concerned. And I know people will say, well, you've still got time, but you've got pre-season to account for. David Moyes wanted these players in for pre-season. So that is a slight problem. Now, let's talk about England, because England seem to be having a decent tournament at the minute. So it'd be remiss of me not to talk about it. If I'm honest with the England team, I was a bit negative going into the tournament. I didn't see what Gareth Southgate was trying to achieve. I still think, if you're talking about an attractive style of play, I don't think all the pieces are quite there yet, despite having all the personnel. I think that's always been my criticism of Southgate, and the pressure will always mount on him when you've got Mason Mount, Foden, Grealish, Jadon Sancho now. It's always going to be a tough job for Gareth to handle, but credit to him for getting that, that win over Germany. It wasn't easy. People look at it, and I don't even think first half we were that great, really. There were a few little moments of brilliance from Sterling and Saka. Other than that, it was a real cagey affair. And I thought Germany, in terms of the confidence of their passing in that first half, could have caused us some real problems. So I think I was kind of always anticipating that type of cagey game. But he got his game plan spot on. I wanted to go to wing-backs. He went to wing-backs. He tried to nullify them. It did work. The decision to bring in Trippier was fantastic. I actually thought Kyle Walker had one of his better performances. And I know people will say, well, he's not really put a foot wrong. I always say in possession, Kyle Walker isn't that good. But what he offers in terms of intelligence, the experience as well to play a right-sided centre-back, and the recovery pace is really what we needed. And that back three of Maguire, Stones and Walker is absolutely solid. Now, naturally, I would like to see our wing-backs get further forward. But what I was really impressed with from this England side is when we got that first goal, and we were lacking creativity, let's be perfectly honest. There were just a few moments of brilliance there, but the game wasn't opening up enough for us to really hurt Germany. And we aren't good enough on the ball, unfortunately, to play that type of game through the lines. When we get that goal from Raheem Sterling, and Germany therefore have to go and chase the game, the dynamic of the situation changed. There was space to move into. Sterling, Declan Rice even, Calvin Phillips, Luke Shaw getting further forward. It suited us massively. And even the introduction of Jack Grealish at that time, when we're trying to chase the game and when we're 1-0 up, it's perfect. It's a perfect decision-making process because those players operate, and the attack, even, I say the attacking players, even Declan Rice operating better when there's space in front of him, winning the ball, turnovers, playing it simple, getting it forward. I think that's when England came to their own. And I think that gives me a little bit of optimism. Not necessarily for the quarter-final. I think that's a different type of game against Ukraine. The semi-final, if we get to that stage against either, I gotta say Crystal Palace, Czech Republic and Denmark. Again, Denmark's a tricky game. I want to see England again against an Italy, a Belgium or a Spain, because I think that's the test, isn't it? But I felt a little bit encouraged to know that Gareth can be conservative at times, can keep it tight, can almost be so negative, mind-numbingly negative, that you're thinking, why am I watching this game? And then all of a sudden, those moments of brilliance from the brilliant players that we do have sparks us. And the minute that game becomes open, England exploit it. England have got the players to exploit it. And that, for me, we didn't really see that in any of the games. I don't think because we were being tested enough. Croatia, tight, cagey. Scotland, we know about their wing-backs and playing almost a midfield five. Difficult in that one. Czech Republic, very similar. But when the game had to open up and it's a knockout stage and Germany are chasing it, that's when England came into their own. So I think that's filled me with a little bit more confidence, despite my reservations about the playing style. And I think we basically got a perfect chance now to get to the final. The game against Ukraine will be difficult, and I will try and do a preview tomorrow to discuss that. It will be a game where I think England will have a lot of the ball. I think if Ukraine are clever, they'll give England a lot of the ball. And it could be an option to play a Jude Bellingham, get Mason Mount back in there, start with Jack Grealish. I think that's what we'll see from England. Or we'll be conservative. We'll be cagey. We'll try and give them the ball. And then what we'll do is we'll get to the latter stages of the game. And it's important to remember here, Ukraine played 120 minutes with significant injuries. If Yarmolenko's not on the pitch, that's a problem. Yaremchuk, again, a player that's performed really well, but he's played nearly 120 minutes. I know he got taken off towards the end. They got multiple injuries. It's something that England can exploit. And I wouldn't say to Gareth Southgate to necessarily start to tinker with the side, but that's where England will come into their own, I feel, at this stage, because of the type of players that we can bring into the side. Jordan Henderson, Jude Bellingham. Now, I wouldn't necessarily advocate for it, and I don't think Southgate's going to tinker with it that much, but if you had to bring in Hendo and Jude Bellingham, those are no shabby options. Mason Mount's fully fit because he hasn't played the previous game as well. You could even look at Ben Chilwell, and I don't think the quality drop-off's quite there. I think you keep Sterling in for experience. I think Grealish, obviously, probably Harry Kane, to be fair, even though I thought he was basically invisible for a lot of that game and he popped up with the goal. So I think we've got a real chance to get to the final, and it's another test. But I am looking forward to it. Is it coming home? Maybe. But at least we can believe. At least we can believe and get behind something. When we got that win over Germany, it's Demons of 2010. I think I'm trying to think now. I was 15, and I think that ruined my whole perception of England. It put me off. Was I 15? Yeah, I was 15. Put me off supporting England. So to get that one back was brilliant. And it's important for Southgate to get that type of win over Germany for the nation, for him himself, for retribution. There's so many factors involved in it that it was so crucial for him to do that. So possibly it will come home. But I'm going to leave it there. This was supposed to be a show type vibe and get some of the regulars on that we've had on the channel before. By the way, if you've got to this stage, make sure you do check out the Patreon account. I meant to say that at the beginning for the West Ham way. Now, if anyone's going to cover this story with any degree of accuracy, and believe me, you're going to need a degree of accuracy here, it is XWH employee. And obviously him and Dave will talk through it, of course, on the podcast. And they've got great interviews on there and guests, etc. So it's only £5 a month. I'll put the link in the description. If you are interested, just check it. Just check it out. You don't even have to listen. Just go and check it out. It's all on there, or follow them on social media. And of course, the West Ham Way website. There's a lot more people that are a lot better at writing than me. I like to rate myself at writing, but some of these people are very good. So check out the type of content that they're putting up there. I think they're looking at some youth players, particularly England, possibly Declan Rice as well. So if you haven't got your feel from this video, go and check all that stuff out. It's all great. Now, if you did like the video, I know people hate me saying this, do like it. I don't know how it helps. I think it's to do with the algorithm or something. But at least if you do want to show your appreciation, feel free. If you want to get your comments in regarding the Declan Rice situation, the transfer activity situation, or even if it's coming home, put it in the comment section. I'll try to reply to you as many as I can. Take care, guys. Enjoy the weekend if I don't speak to you before then. And come on, England. It's coming home. It's coming home. I've convinced myself now.